Hi, and welcome to Straight Talk About God video. I'm Jack. This is the last installment of the Lost Tribes series, number 24, and it's probably for Americans the most important of all of them because it's all about the United States. A lot of people ask if the United States is found in the Bible, in prophecy or whatever, and yes, it is. Although, it's through the side door, and you have to put other things together and make sure you have the right context, and then you find out that, yeah, that's the United States. And we'll get into that in detail later on. But first of all, 10 tribes. See, the U.S., if you have seen any of the other segments, you'll know that the U.S. is the tribe of Manasseh. Britain is Ephraim, the younger brother of Joseph, and Manasseh, the firstborn, the older brother, is the United States. Okay, how does it work? Well, what we have to go back and look at is when Jacob was getting ready to die. First he called in Joseph and had him bring his sons in there to get a blessing. Then, that's in chapter 48 of Genesis, and then in chapter 49, Jacob is just about to die, and he blesses all the kids and passes on the birthright. So there's two separate events going here. And what we need to understand is that Manasseh turns out to be the 13th tribe. Okay, there are 12 tribes, 12 sons of Jacob, okay? But when they get into the promised land, only 11 sons will make up the nation as tribes, because Levi, he won't get a plot of land because he's the tribe that supplies the priests and the Levites for the work in the temple. He doesn't have his own separate. He's not part of the whole governing body, okay, like the other 11 tribes are. So now we only got 11 tribes, but let's go to Genesis, okay, before we do that. Genesis 48, and as I said, Joseph brings his kids in, and Jacob gives them a blessing. And in verse 19, second part of verse 19, he's talking about the firstborn. See, in 18, and Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn," indicating Manasseh, who he offered to Jacob on his left hand. He says, "Here's Manasseh," because he's the firstborn, and Jacob would put his right hand on Manasseh, the hand of power, the hand of blessing, so forth, but he crossed his hands. Remember that? Crossed his hands, and he put the power hand, the blessing hand, on Ephraim, the younger son. Okay? And Joseph said, "Hey, that's not right. This guy here," see? But then Jacob says, and his father refused, and he said, "I know it, my son, I know it. He also, Manasseh, also shall become a people," a nation, original language, a nation, a great people, okay? "And he shall also be great." It won't be like Luxembourg. It'll be like the United States, the greatest nation, single nation of history is the United States, as it should be because it's God's doing, okay? See, but truly his younger brother, Ephraim, shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become not a great nation, but a multitude of nations. World empire. Okay? So Ephraim, a whole bunch of nations. Manasseh, one great nation. But we go down here to verse 20 is a really important part here. And he blessed them that day, saying, in thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Angel which first laid it on his right. Well, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you. As that's in the first part of 48. Okay, verse 5. This is how we determine what tribe is what and where they exist in the hierarchy. All right? Verse 5 says, and now thy two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, talking to Joseph, okay, before I came unto thee in Egypt, are mine. Your sons are mine. Oh, they're not yours anymore, they're mine. He adopts Ephraim and Manasseh. Jacob adopts them. Okay, so now Ephraim is first in line and Manasseh is second in line. So the first in line will take Joseph's place when he goes. And Ephraim will become Joseph. He'll be the 11th tribe because Levi is out. Instead of Joseph being the 11th tribe, Ephraim will be the 11th tribe. Okay? And then we have Manasseh coming in afterwards, and he'll be the 12th tribe. So when they get to the Holy Land and have this governing body of a nation, there'll be 12 tribes governing, or, taking up the land with Levi at the temple. Okay? But now Levi is still there. They're not in the Holy Land. So Ephraim takes Joseph's place, and Manasseh is not the 12th tribe. He's the 13th tribe. There's 13 of them now. Okay? So Manasseh is the 13th tribe. And that's what we want to establish. Because we have to know that Manasseh is connected, directly connected to the number 13. Great. I have a book here by E. Raymond Cap that we're going to talk about right now. But before we do that, Manasseh, as well as his father Joseph, was well versed in this method of warfare. For we read that the sons of Reuben and, I forgot to tell you about that. Wait a minute, he says, they are mine. And then the verse continues, and he puts him in their hierarchy place. Okay? Manasseh is the 13th tribe to come into the family, but Jacob gives Ephraim and Manasseh the number 1 and 2 spot, because he goes on to say, they are mine, as Reuben, the firstborn, and Simeon, the secondborn, they shall be mine. He put Ephraim as the firstborn of the whole family. Reuben, he lost it. Okay, and Simeon, he was out too. See? Okay, I won't go into that part. But sons of Reuben and the Gadites and half-tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men, able to wear buckler and sword and shoot with a bow. This is from Chronicles 5:18. Okay? And shoot with a bow and skillful at war, were 4 and 440,000, 103 score, and so blah, 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 blah. In scripture symbolism, the bundle of arrows represents the mighty, the weapons of the Almighty. Okay? God is for peace, right? But he'll make war on you in a minute if you don't do it right. Okay? So Manasseh wound up with two heraldic symbols. Okay? Manasseh's heraldry had two symbols, not one. Some of them only had one, some had two. Ephraim was the ox, bull, okay? Bull. Who in Britain hasn't heard of John Bull? Bull or unicorn. Okay, that's Ephraim. Manasseh had the olive branch and a bundle of arrows. The primary symbol was the olive branch. Notice a whole bunch of olives there, and there's even one down here that's opened up and stuff. And there's 9 arrows there, if you can count them. That's Manasseh's heraldry, right? But what we want to look at, is the Great Seal of the United States. The Great Seal. We've seen this book before, okay? The Great Seal of the United States by E. Raymond Capt. Okay? E. Raymond Capt. Oh, if you stop the tape right now, stop the video right now, and go get a dollar bill. Okay, get a dollar bill, because the front and the back of the Great Seal is on the dollar bill. It's not on any other money, but it's on the dollar bill. So maybe you're back with your dollar bill now. And first of all, we look at the front side. That's called the obverse front side. That's the one with the eagle on it. And then we're going to look at the back side, the reverse. Okay? Well, if you notice, the eagle has a shield on his chest, right? Okay? And in the shield, there are 13 stripes, or pathways, whichever you want to call it. Above those 13 pathways is a little section here that you can't see all that well, but it's got stripes across it, and there's 13 of those. That's 2 13s on the seal so far. Okay, what else do we have? We have E pluribus unum. How many letters in E pluribus unum? 13. Above the eagle is what they call a glory, this cloud formation here, and inside the glory is a group of stars configured like what we call the Star of David. David never used that star, okay? That hexagram is straight out of the occult, way before David's time, okay? Solomon started incorporating that into his sphere. That's how it wound up over there, okay? It's not the Star of David, okay, but we call it the Star of David. There are 13 stars that make up that Star of David, okay? So we've got 13, 13, 13, 13. That's 4 so far. But look here. And here. Whoa. Now you notice the eagle is facing the right side here. And that's olives, isn't it? There are 13 olives there and 13 leaves in the olive branch. There's 2 more 13s. Look over here and you'll see this bundle of arrows, and you can't count 13 feathers, but you can count 13 arrow points. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 13s just on the front side of the Great Seal. And I got out my magnifying glass, and can you see there's a bunch of little dots. There's some lines that come out here, but there's little dots all over there. I counted those up, there's 117 of them. 117 dots. That's 9 times 13. Okay, what about the reverse? That's the side with the pyramid on it. Okay, the reverse. Well, first of all, we've got Annuit Coptus, 13 letters again. And then we've got this pyramid that isn't finished, because that's not the capstone. It isn't finished, but there are 13 courses of stone there. Additionally, when you count up, see, because you've got these 13 courses, and then on the side over here you've got more stones showing. So if you count up all the stones in each level and on the side, you come up with 91 pieces of stone, 91 blocks of stone. 91 is 7 times 13. We've got about 10 13s all around the Great Seal. Oh, well, that was because there were 13 colonies. Well, sure, 13 colonies, but there could have been 14 colonies when independence was declared. There could have been 10 colonies. There just happened to be 13 colonies at the same time. And we're not going to get into any of the occult symbolism because 13 in the occult, that's a heavy-duty number, right? 13, 11, heavy numbers. And the occult people had a lot to do with what goes on with the seal, okay? But you can't deny the olives and the arrows. You can't deny that. These founders knew where they came from, okay? These founders, the founders of this country, knew that they had the Israelite heritage. The Great Seal of the United States is the evidence, a piece of evidence that the United States is Manasseh. Manasseh. Now, here's a quote from George Washington. George Washington says, quote, "No people can be bound to acknowledge and adore the invisible hand which conducts the affairs, capital A, affairs of men more than the people of the United States. Every step by which they have advanced to the character of an independent nation seems to have been distinguished by some token of providential agency." George Washington. America's founding fathers spoke deliberately and persistently of the American Israel's destiny. Thomas Jefferson concluded his second inaugural address with these words, "I shall need the favor of that being, capital B, in whose hands we are, who led our fathers as Israel of old from their native land and planted them in the country flowing with all the necessities and comforts of life." End quote. According to Jefferson, America was to act as a model democratic republic, thereby serving as, quote, "the world's best hope." These guys knew where they came from, huh? Maybe I can find this real quick here. A lot of different people contributed to the seal over many years, okay? And it wasn't finalized till the late 1800s. But here's one version of the reverse. Can you see that? There's a angelic kind of a being up there, huh? And what's happening there, huh? Can you see Pharaoh's army being covered over with the water in the Red Sea, huh? Okay. Let's see. Wait a second here. Dr. Franklin proposes. This is a letter from John Adams. Okay. We find the following remarks. Dr. Franklin proposes a device for a seal. Moses overwhelmed with the waters this motto: rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Franklin said, hey, put the Red Sea on there and let's see Pharaoh being drowned. And we, okay, Mr. Jefferson proposed the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. On the other side, Hanks and Horsa, the Saxon chiefs, on the front side, the Saxon chiefs from whom we claim honor of being descended, and whose political principles and form of government we have assumed. See, here's what he said we put on the other side. See? And it's got the 13 colonies in the middle, right? Again, these people knew where they were coming from, all right? Well, there was a verse in 49 that I wanted to remind you about. Genesis 49. Do we get to that now? I think. Yeah, he adopts the kids. No, we get to that later. Right, okay. So, I want to stick in a couple of ideas of things about the destiny of our republic as related by George Washington at Valley Forge. Okay? Well, I'd like to read a whole lot of this to you, but what happened was Washington is at Valley Forge and he's ready to resign. He's in bad shape. He's retreated from Philadelphia and, you know, the army is suffering and, oh, God, he's writing out his resignation. In the very middle of the word resignation, he says resign, ... He has a vision. Now, maybe he fell asleep. He had a vision. And this vision outlined 3 great wars and a couple of building up of the United States. Okay? He goes outside to kind of walk around in the troops, and they all hail him, and their spirits are way up. You know, it's kind of Christmas time anyway. And they give him some of their food to eat and say what a good great guy he is, and he goes back and he says, okay, I won't resign. Okay? But then General George McClellan, that's the Civil War. See, the Civil War was the second part of the vision of Washington. Now McClellan is having problems, and he's got a battle plan, okay? But he's kind of tired, and he puts his head down, and he has a vision, okay? And the vision is what the Southern troops the rebels, what they're doing, and what they're planning for him. See, because they found out his plans, right? And they're getting set up to ambush him and so forth. He has a vision, shows exactly where they are and what they're doing and all that, everything. And the vision is this guy. This guy shows up in his vision. Boom. And he says, this is happening and that's happening and do this and don't do that and blah, 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 and then the vision goes away. And he says it was George Washington. The spirit of George Washington came and told him what the Rebs were doing, and he beat them up because he knew what's going on. Okay? Pretty good stuff. I'd like to read the whole thing to you, but we don't have that much time. So, let's see. What we need to do is look at the founders of this as a nation. Okay? That would be the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims, they came out from over in the England area over there and came over here and established, with the Mayflower and the Plymouth Rock and all that stuff. And they were here to build a nation. Okay? Unlike the entrepreneurs with the plantations and all those other things. There were other settlers here, but they came to make a nation and be their own people, unlike some of the other settlers. So here's a quick review of, and then we'll get into a lot of detail. Maybe you can see this. Okay. Well, wait a second. I gotta take this down out of here. So we've got wait a minute. We need another piece here. That's all right. What do we got? In 1619, they get the patents for Virginia. Okay? Got to remember that. It's patents for Virginia. Okay? In 1620, they sail. 1619, 1620, they sail. A big storm blows them off course. They land in Plymouth. They make the Mayflower Compact, and then they go ashore. Okay? 1621, they get some help from the Indians, but a plague wiped out most of the Indians, right? And 300 to 400 of them down in Virginia were wiped out by an Indian uprising. But without Squanto, their Indian helper, they would have all died off. He showed them a lot of good stuff, right? And the Mayflower Compact, okay, served as a model for the Declaration of Independence, which serves as a model for the Constitution of the United States, which is unique. Constitution is unique, except for Moses. Moses, the law of the Bible, Moses, because that law was taken by Jeremiah and set up in Ireland and became the Irish common law, which became English common law, which became the Mayflower Compact. Isn't that interesting? I think God was working there, wouldn't you? Of course he was working. Okay, the Pilgrims. Wow, the Pilgrims. Now, as we go through this Pilgrim study, you're going to have to remember or notice that there's, well, just in the details I've got here, there are 5 definite events that really show there was something going on behind the door there that was pushing these things or events around, so that what happened eventually the result would be the founding of the United States with the Pilgrims. Fate, Providence, put a finger in the pie and mixed it up, and all of a sudden a different thing was going on. Okay? So we'll get into the details here. First of all, we got to start way earlier than the Pilgrims coming. Okay? Let's see here. Heading for Spain. In his extraordinary career, Squanto had seen far more of the world than any of the Pilgrims. Squanto, he's an Indian, okay? He happens to be from the very spot that they land, okay? That was his tribe's place, the Patuxet tribe, okay? He was carried to England in 1605 by the exploring party of Captain George Weymouth. He had returned in 1614 with Captain John Smith. Remember his name? Upon the latter's departure, one of his ships had been left behind with a Captain Thomas Hunt in command, under instructions to sail for home after he had loaded up with fish and obtained a cargo of beaver skins and other articles from the Indians. Okay? He didn't do that. He went up and down the coast, luring the Indians on board, put them in the hold for slaves. Phew. They didn't like that. And he wasn't the only one. There was a good-sized slave trade going on, with the Indians going east and black people coming west. Okay. Among others, he kidnapped 20 of the Patuxet, including Squanto. He's been in England, came back, this guy shows up, and all of a sudden he's a slave, and he's going east again. And 7 of the Nauset, arousing in that warlike tribe a deep suspicion and hatred of the whites. Whoa. Heading for Spain, Hunt sold the, quote, poor silly savages for rails of 8, end quote, in the slave market at Malaga. Most of his victims passed to an unknown fate, perhaps ending their days in the curious blackamoors of North African harems. But a few of them fell into the hands of local friars. God just happened to have a few people there, you know, who decided that what the grieving captives, they didn't even know what they were doing, right? Decided that the grieving captives, what they needed most was, quote, to be instructed in the Christian faith. Right. These poor heathen, you know. Squanto was one of these. They had a shipload of slaves, okay? A few of them went with the friars, and one of them happened to be Squanto. But after a time, he managed to get away to London. He'd already been there, you know, years earlier. London, where he lived for several years with a rich merchant, John Slaney, treasurer of the Newfoundland Company. Okay. Okay, so Squanto's with Slaney in London, and that's in 1614. Okay? 1617, in 1617, it was explained to the Pilgrims about the plague. Ooh, the plague. He explained the mystery of the abandoned cornfields. See, if you remember any of the history there, they landed, there was nobody there. There was nobody there. Cornfields were out there, but there were nobody there. Okay? And this is 1621, okay? After all this slavery stuff is happening and the Indians are really irate about the whole thing. Okay? And why it was that no Indians had been seen for weeks. There were none to see, for a great tragedy had recently overwhelmed the Patuxet tribe. 4 years previously, in 1617, a devastating plague, probably smallpox, had swept the forests of New England, spreading rapidly from the trading posts operated along the Maine coast during the fishing season. In this instant, the plague decimated many tribes, utterly destroyed others, wiping out the local Patuxet. They couldn't have any trouble with the Indians. There weren't any. There weren't any. Okay? Okay, back to Squanto. Okay? Squanto, he's in England with Slaney, right? And there, through Slaney, he met Captain Thomas Dermer, and accompanied him when he set out to in 1619 to explore New England. Oh, he's going to go back home now. Squanto gets a chance to go back home. Wow, great. Okay, he's been gone for a long time. All right, 1614. Gone. And this is 3 years. Whew. Well, let's see. Dermer coming in New England. At the island of Monhegan, the chief English fishing station in Maine waters, Dermer took Samoset on board. Now, we're getting ahead of the story with this, but I'll read it anyway. On board, and sailed south, dropping anchor at Plymouth Harbor. Just 6 months, Squanto and Samoset are there, 6 months before the Mayflower arrived. Whoa. Squanto, to find that the plague had exterminated his people, carrying off every last man, woman, and child, all of his family and friends, he went to live with the Wampanoag up north a little ways. Evidently, he was not very happy there, and from the day he met the Pilgrims, he never left them. Okay? Squanto. 1620. That was 1619. 1620. Let's see. What page are we on here? I got so many marks in here, it's hard to... Here it is. 1780. Oh, Cushman and Brewster. Right. These two guys, representatives of these dissident Pilgrims, they were dissidents. They were in trouble. Okay, they're going to try to get the patents for some land, and then he can move to the new world, right? At length, in the spring of 1619, okay, Cushman and Brewster were sent to London, quote, to end with ye Virginia Company as well as they could. Get the best deal they could. Any kind of patent they could, okay, patent they could. Okay, so they got those patents, 17, let's see, 28. Okay, at long last, well, wait a minute, they took the patents out, but they took it out in another man's name, because because nobody liked them. See, So, where is the, where is that? 70, 18, wait, 18. 18. Here it is. Cushman succeeded in obtaining a patent to a tract of land along the northern boundary of the Virginia colony. Presumably, the tract lay somewhere between Delaware and Hudson rivers. For many reasons, they had been counseled by friends in London to hide their identity, and the patent was taken out in the name of John Wincombe, a, quote, religious gentleman in the house of the Dowager Duchess of Lincoln. Okay. And then, at long last, at sunrise on July 21st, 1620, the next year, the Pilgrim vanguard set out for Delft Haven, about 20 miles to the south on the Maas, just a few miles below Rotterdam. Okay. They're going to go down to England and pick up the Mayflower and then make it all the way out. Okay. 1521. He accompanied the Mayflower. Quanto last? Wait a minute. More like maybe to 190. Oh, is that, no, it's not 184. 180. 90. Am I boring you? 21. 98. May drops. Oh, I see. We already said that part. Where Dermer drops off Squanto and Samoset in Plymouth before the Pilgrims show up. Okay. So they leave Delft Haven in July, and then in August, where is that? August. On August 5th, that's pretty late. August, okay? They probably should have gone out in June, something like that. On August 5th, after an anxious delay of almost 2 weeks, the Speedwell, that's the ship from up north that came down, the Speedwell was ready at last and tacked out of the harbor in the wake of the Mayflower. Captain Christopher Jones in command. To the day of departure, Cushman and others had nursed the hope that the adventurers would relent and send them more money, but no money came. They needed better provisions and stuff. They left, but now, what happened to those Franciscans? There's a part earlier on, a year or so earlier, the Franciscans has gotten together a 200-person group, and they sailed. Okay, this was in 1618. Okay, 1618. They put into the mouth of Chesapeake Bay and dropped anchor off Jamestown. Of some 200 passengers, only 50 were alive, and these soon scattered. Blackwell and his chief lieutenant, Judas the Purser Bearer, Bowman, or it's his nickname, now also an elder, had died at sea and had been consigned to the watery grave. Such was the miserable end of the once proud and arrogant Franciscans. Why? Because they get hit by a heavy storm, because they left too late. The news of the disaster sent cold chill of apprehension down the spines of many, but most took it in their stride. A month or so later, Cushman succeeded in obtaining the patent of the tract of land, North Colony. We read that part, okay? So now the Mayflower and the Speedwell are also leaving late August, okay? How long a trip is it across in a sail, with sails like that? It's almost 3 months, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. There's one amusing, humorous story here, okay? Then, wait, no, 44, here. The sailors, they didn't like the Mayflower very much. It was September, okay? Under fair skies and a fresh breeze still blowing, September passed. They left in August, September gone, okay? Mayflower was now in the mid-Atlantic and making steady headway, okay? But as week after week dragged on, with nothing to break the monotony of the voyage, tensions began to rise in the crowded ship. Between saints and strangers, masters and servants, passengers and crew. The sailors loathed Christopher Martin and all about him, and could not stomach the pious ways of the Leyden group. L-A-Y-D-E-N, Leyden, that's where they came from. Cursing them daily and with grievous execrations. One of their worst tormentors, a huge brawny seaman, used to taunt the weak and sick by saying that he expected to bury half of them at sea and, quote, make merry with what they had. Take all their stuff. When they reproached him, no matter how gently, he would curse and swear most bitterly. But retribution was swift in coming. Stricken himself one morning, this, quote, proud and very profane young man, unquote, was dead by afternoon, and his body was the first to go overboard. Took away from him, why? Okay. Well, they're going along. Fair seas, fair winds, weeks, boredom, all that stuff. But all of a sudden, God says, oh, I forgot to tell you. Thus, suddenly, the weather changed as fierce storms roaring out of the west. For days at a time, it was impossible to carry a yard of sail. The ship drifting under bare poles, with the helmsman desperately trying to hold her into the wind as she wallowed through mountains of seas, which often had her laying on her beam ends. The pounding of heavy seas opened up many seams in the deck and superstructure, letting cascades of icy water down upon the ill and frightened passengers curled up in their narrow bunks below. Unable to endure it any longer, in the stuffy hold, John Howland came on deck one day and was immediately swept overboard. The ship happened to be trailing some of the topsail halyards, and Howland managed to grab hold of these and hang on, quote, though he was sundry fathoms underwater, end quote, till he was pulled up on deck with a boat hook. And he was ill after that, but he lived a long time. The storm mounted to new fury, and at length, with the report of a cannon, the main beam amidship cracked and buckled. Even the skipper was seriously concerned. And the saints were simply terrified. Remembering the fate of Francis Blackwell and his Franciscans, who came to grief just 2 years before because they too departed rather too late in the season for a safe voyage. Right. North Atlantic in the wintertime, blowing up toward winter? All those nor'easters from out in Maine and stuff, I guess. Okay. What's the picture? 54. Pilgrims officially, okay. So they're blown off course, and they wind up in New England, not Virginia, right? Oh, what a coincidence. That's fate number 2, okay? Providence number 2. The crisis on board had another significance, which has been ill understood. From the Pilgrim description of events, the inference is plain that overnight they had abandoned all idea of going on to Virginia. They could have, when they made landfall, they could wait a while and make their way down the coast to Virginia. But from all surrounding circumstances, it seemed seriously questioned whether they had entertained such an idea for some time. Maybe they never planned to do that, huh? Weston had talked to them about New England and the profitable fisheries there, and they had spent some of their meager funds. Remember, they wanted more funds and didn't have enough. They spent some of their meager funds in buying hooks, seines, and salt. Fishery. Okay? So they changed their mind. They changed their mind, they're going to stay. Okay? Well, wait a second. 52. 52 day whose one November 11th they're on shore. They make up the compact. Oh, here's a little bit about the compact, okay? Okay. Here's partially what the compact says. Okay. Quote, "In ye name of God, amen," it began, "we whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, do by these presents solemnly and mutually in ye presence of God and of one another covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic." The other colonists didn't do this. And by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts and constitutions and offices from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for ye general good of ye colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. We're going to make up laws that are equal for everybody. No aristocratic government anymore. Okay? And here's what John Quincy Adams said about the Mayflower Compact. He said, let's see, he hailed it as a great charter of freedom, which it was. It did not apply to all, to be sure, but, the women couldn't vote, right? Okay. And its promise of just and equal laws was often more honored in the breach than in observance. But for its day, an extraordinary document, a remarkable statement of revolutionary new principles, an important milestone in our long, hard, and often bloody ascent from feudalism, from the degrading aristocratic system of power and privilege for the few which had held Europe in irons for centuries. John Quincy Adams thought the compact was pretty good. And it became the Constitution. Okay? It was the founding of the Constitution. Right? But we got to get back to Squanto. I mean, not Squanto, Samoset. Remember Samoset? Okay, he was with Dermer and Squanto, and they went up north and so forth, and the Pilgrims landed. There's nobody around, right? And so they're in town, more determined than ever to complete their military organization and get everything in order, especially since the women and children had just come ashore. It's that early. The Pilgrims met once again the next day. Business was just getting underway when, as if in a nightmare, oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. We gotta go here first, okay? Because they're ashore already, and they're doing their business. See. Doubtless because of the general sickness, a month passed before a meeting could be called to conclude the business of military organization. Okay? Broken off before. The Pilgrims were just sitting down when they were again interrupted, and in the most astonishing manner. Armed with a bow and arrows, a tall, powerful warrior emerged from the woods. "Welcome," said the Indian, greeting them in English, smiling as the Pilgrims stared at him in blank surprise. His name was Samoset. Samoset. He said, and from him the Pilgrims learned many things they wished to know. But before answering their flood of questions, he asked for some beer. Having none, they gave him, quote, biscuit and butter and cheese and pudding and a piece of mallard, all of which he liked well. They then threw about him a long coat, a bright red horseman's coat, to keep him warm, they said, but rather to cool their own crimson blushes, it would seem, for he was stark naked, except for a leather string about his waist, quote, with fringe about a span long or little more. This Indian walks up out of the woods with his weapons. He's naked. He's naked. Samoset, strangely, was not a native to these parts, but a foreigner. Quote, foreigner. He wasn't from Patuxet. Okay? Like the Pilgrims themselves, having come some months before on a visit from Pemaquid, far up the Maine coast, where he was a chief or sagamore of the subtribe Abenaki, or the Wabanaki, people of the dawn. Okay? He explained the mystery of the, remember? He's the one that told them about the plague, okay? And he introduced Squanto to him. So he shows up, okay? And then he goes away. He goes away for a while. But more determined than ever to complete their military organization and get everything in order, especially since the women and children had just come ashore, remember? The Pilgrims met once again the next day. Business was just getting underway. As if in a nightmare, 2 Indians appeared and sent all scurrying for their muskets. But there was no cause for alarm. It was Samoset again. Oh, hi, Samoset. Who had come with a friend whom he introduced as Squanto. Remember? Again, Dermer dropped them off, and they said, back with this, and they were left. Right? And now the Pilgrims have been, that was 6 months before the Pilgrims landed. Okay? So it's quite a number of months, and now they're back. And they say, oh, how you doing, guys? Introduced Squatco, and he said, quote, he had been in England and could speak better English than himself. The name of the now famous Squanto, or Tisquantum, was his name, Tisquantum, appears on many a page of the Pilgrim records, but the company had no time for him now. Everybody was so excited, for Samoset had come with breathtaking news that the great chief Massasoit was at hand with his brother Quadequine and most of their men. Got a big parlay going on, a big peace thing going on, okay? And a couple of things Squanto does. Nothing could have been more fortunate than Squanto being there. Fate. Right? Without Squanto and his native skills and knowledge of the country, the Pilgrims would most certainly have perished. Squanto showed them how to plant their corn. The seed was pilfered from the Cape, on the Cape in small, properly spaced hillocks, and now how to dress and tend it, quote unquote. You know, if they were to get any kind of crops in these old grounds, they would have to fertilize the field. And he showed them how to fertilize the field with fish, right? Adding that they could easily catch plenty as soon as the herring began their spring run in the brook. Showing them how to build traps for the purpose. Okay? Showed them how to plant the corn and put the fish in there. In other ways, the new saint, capital S, for he quickly embraced the holy discipline, was invaluable, serving as interpreter and advisor in all relations with the Indians. Altogether, as the Pilgrims gratefully acknowledged many times, Squanto was, quote, a special instrument sent of God for their good, beyond their expectations. Oh, he just happened to be there. And there were no Indians. There were no Indians there, anywhere. Huh? Well, after a while, a boat shows up. It's called the Sparrow. Boat shows up. Boom. Ship goes up. And a boat comes ashore. Strangely, the boat from the Sparrow proved a godsend. A godsend in disguise, and from the most unexpected quarter. See, these things just fall out of the sky, right? All of a sudden there's this big storm. You know, that storm could have waited a week, could have been a week earlier before they got there. You know, just the storm fell out of the sky, right? Okay. And then Samoset falls out of the sky, naked. And Squanto falls out of the sky. Oh, there's this guy. And without him, they'd all die. On it, this boat from the Sparrow, on it had come a letter from a stranger addressed to, quote, his good friends at Plymouth, unquote, written by one Captain John Huddleston, master of one of the fishing vessels in Maine waters. He didn't even know who they were. He knew they were down there, but he didn't know they were. He wished to inform them, he said, that 300 or 400 settlers in Virginia had just lost their lives in a big Indian uprising. I mentioned that earlier. Quote, therefore I entreat you, although not knowing you, that ye old rule which I learned when I went to school may be sufficient. That is, happy is he whom other men's harms doth make to beware. Look what happened to these guys down in Virginia. If you're going to change your mind and come down there, don't do it. You'll die too. See? So even if they wanted to change their mind, don't do that. See? A final warning from God saying, stay where you are. This is the place where I sent you. I want you. The Pilgrims. So, this guy Squanto, in 1605, 15 years before the Pilgrims even started out, he's already in England. He comes back in 1614 to America, finds the plague, leaves, right? Well, what if the Pilgrims didn't have him to help out in communicating with some of the Indians that, like Manasseh, came down with all his buddies? What if they didn't, Do you realize that God was getting Squanto ready 15 years before the Pilgrims arrived? He's already in England in 1605. Oh, that's just a coincidence. Coincidence. And then the big storm, blows him out. Squanto shows up. Samoset shows up out of the sky, helps him out, everything. Forgot to tell you this. Saints and Strangers. What is it? George F. Willison. Let's see, he wrote this in 1945. Nice big book. Okay? A lot of good stuff in there. Okay? Well, that's the story of the Pilgrims. But where's that other sheet here? We gotta remember I told you that the U.S. is in the Bible, prophecy in the Bible. Well, first of all, we've got Manasseh on the Great Seal, with the arrows and the olives, clearly the tribe of Manasseh there. But in the Bible, we'll go back to Genesis in chapter 49, and Jacob again is giving out the birthright. He gives Judith the right to rule a family and to make sure that God's law is kept with him. Everything else, all the money, all the jewels, all the cattle, all the servants, all the promises of God that was given to Abraham and then Isaac and then Jacob, all those promises are given up to the birthright line, right? Everything goes to Joseph. Everything goes to Joseph. And then when he dies, Ephraim gets the birthright, okay? Now remember, Joseph is ruling Egypt. And when Joseph dies, Ephraim, he doesn't rule Egypt because Jacob said Judah will rule. So Zerah takes over, of the line of Judah. Zerah takes over ruling. But he doesn't get the birthright. He just gets the chance to be the king. Joseph is all that birthright. And Ephraim gets all the birthright. Well, what does that birthright contain? It contains all kinds of promises, right? First of all, remember, a multitude of nations for Ephraim. That's out of Jacob's mouth, okay? But out of God's mouth to Abraham, that's the same promise. Remember that? The same promise? He said, you won't be able to number all of the people that will come out of you. And there'll be a company of nations. A company of nations. Whoa, what is that? But a world empire. Okay? A world empire is going to come out of Abraham. He passes that on to Isaac. He passes that on to Jacob. Jacob passes it on to Joseph. Joseph passes it on to Ephraim. And Ephraim becomes a world empire, the British Empire. And in 49, verse 22, starts the passing on the birthright by Jacob. Joseph is a fruitful bough. A fruitful bough. Even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. Goes everywhere. Okay? Lots of different places. Well, if you're a world empire, you go a lot of different places, don't you? You go from India, the Falkland Islands, down to Australia, over to Canada, and the United States is over there. Okay? Over the wall. Take a look at Isaiah 49. Isaiah 49, what verse is that? 22? Isaiah 49, 22. No, not 22. Oh, it was Genesis 22. 49:20, okay? Now I got to remind you that Isaiah very heavily from chapter 40 on is all about the house of Israel, the 10 tribes. Who runs the 10 tribes? Ephraim. Ephraim is the nobility of all 12 tribes. And he's the one who runs the 10 tribes after the kingdom split. For 200 years, Ephraim is ruling, his line is ruling the northern 10 tribe kingdom until Assyria comes and takes them all away. Okay? And Isaiah talks about all of that. And he brings them all the way from there, all the way to Jesus, and how they relate and how Jesus relates to them. And what he's going to do for them and with them and all that, okay? And when you know all of this, you find out that Isaiah, he doesn't say Britain, does he? He says all the different names for the house of Israel, but over and over he says the isles afar off, meaning the house of Israel. House of Israel, the isles afar off. Listen to me, O isles. Be silent before me, O isles, and let the people renew their strength. Let the 10 tribes and the house of Israel up there in northwest Europe renew their strength until they can be a force for me again and get the word out of my coming kingdom, which is what Britain and the United States Bible Societies did for the world. So, Isaiah is talking to the house of Israel, okay, which is headed up by Ephraim. Ephraim, Britain, world empire. Okay. The children which thou, Ephraim, shall have after thou hast lost the other, shall say again in thine ears, this place is too strait for me. Give me a place that I may dwell. Okay, let me put it in my words. The children, Ephraim, British Empire, the nations that make up your British Empire will say to you, this place is too strait for me. When will they do that? After thou hast lost another. The British Empire, at some time in history, when they're an empire, will lose one of their children, one of their nations. And after that happens, the other nations in the empire will say, wait a minute, I want to be free too. And it'll become eventually the Commonwealth instead of the empire, okay? The British Commonwealth. It's the beginning of the breakup of the British Empire. After they lose the Pilgrims and Manasseh, United States. They lose the United States. There's the United States right there in Isaiah. Okay? Isaiah again in 771. This is the really good one. This describes the United States in geography. Yeah, in geography. Now, this translation just butchers it, okay? But we know when we go to the original language, and some of the proper translations are right in the margin of my Bible. You don't even have to go look them up, they're right there. Whoa! Verse 1 of chapter 18. Isaiah 18, chapter 1, verse 1, or chapter 18, verse 1. It says, woe. Woe can equally mean ho. Hey, you guys. Ho. To the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond, and that means behind, the rivers of Ethiopia. You go from Israel to Ethiopia, and you're going northwest. It's beyond Ethiopia. Beyond Ethiopia, this is the land, a land that sendeth ambassadors by the sea. Sends ambassadors by the sea, even in vessels of bulrushes. That's not hired with the Kontiki hired all. That's not him, bulrushes, okay? That was pretty good, wasn't it, though? Upon the waters, saying, go ye swift messengers to a nation scattered and peeled. Well, scattered, even scattered in my margin, says outspread. Not scattered, but outspread. Big. This is a big land. Big land. And peeled doesn't mean peeled, it means polished. It's a beautiful, huge, beautiful land. Okay? That's point number one. Scattered and peeled to a people terrible from their beginning. Started with a revolution against the mightiest nation, empire in the world at the time. They beat them up. Terrible from their beginning. Hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden down. Meted out. Well, we've surveyed everything about this place. And trodden down means to trample, which could be walking everywhere around the land and, the Lewis and Clark expedition and all that stuff, but it could mean trampling other people too, as we might see later. Meted out and trampled down, whose land, here's another geographical proof, whose land the rivers have spoiled. Oh, spoiled. Wow. Spoiled is the word in Hebrew that they use in the sacrifice. And it means to quarter it. It quarter the sacrifice. You wave the shoulder and all that. Okay? Even in my margin, it says, oh no, that's another bad translation. Despise. Yeah, right. No, you look it up in the original language. Spoiled means quartered. Well, the United States is quartered, isn't it? Mississippi is almost right in the middle. You got the Colorado, and then over to the east, I can't remember that river. Look on the map of all the different countries of the world and see if that general idea of quartering is apparent. You won't find it except for the United States. All right? Verse 3, all ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth. Whoa, that's not just your neighbor, that's the people across the oceans, every place. This is a worldwide thing happening here, okay? Chapter 18 at the beginning is talking about the end times when there's billions of people on the earth already, okay? Not 300 BC, okay? All ye inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, see ye. watch out, see ye, when he, this nation, lifteth up the ensign. When he lifts up his flag, pay attention, pay attention, on the mountains. And when he bloweth the trumpet, hear ye. Okay? He lifts up the flag and blows the trumpet of war. Pay attention. Okay, you're going to get it if you don't. Okay? All of those things will apply to the United States. Okay? Skip down to verse 7. It says what's going to happen to those people in the millennium. The same people in the millennium. In that time shall a present be brought unto the Lord of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, people terrible from their beginning, and hitherto a nation meted out and trodden down. Just so you know that it's the same one he's talking about, okay? Trodden down, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, the Mount Zion. This people of the United States, of the house of Israel, are going to wind up at some time during the future, will bring a present to God in Jerusalem. Okay, what could that mean? He's going to bring a present. Well, when you do your study on end times prophecies and stuff, you find out that time after time after time in the prophecies and all the different, not all, but most of the different prophets, they talk about the gathering of all 12 tribes, the house of Israel, 10 tribes, and the house of Judah, 2 tribes. All 12 tribes will be gathered together as one. Ezekiel's 2 sticks, the stick of Joseph and the stick of Judah. They're gonna be one nation again. And that one nation will be the present offered to Jehovah in Zion. And then he will use those people throughout the millennium to do more of his work. United States. Well, there's more. Who has always put down world tyranny? How about the Roman Empire? That was pretty tyrannical, yeah? Who finally put down the Roman Empire and their persecution of Christianity? Constantine, right? First he beat up people over in Europe, and then he went to Rome, beat up them. He became the emperor. Boom. His mother was British. He had a British mother. His father was Roman, but his mother was Britain. He was born and raised in England, in Britain. Okay? Britain put down the Roman Empire. More than once, because the Goths, if you remember early segments, the Goths came back. The Gauls came back from France, Gaul, made their way back over to the Black Sea, and on the way they sacked Rome. Right? Okay? Israelites. Okay? How about the First World War? The tyranny of the First World War, the Kaiser and everything. Who won the First World War? Britain and the United States. Who won the Second World War? Britain and the United States. Jeremiah told us that was going to happen. He did? Wow. Try Jeremiah 51, starting verse 19. Who's he talking to? Verse 5, it says, "For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah." See, both of them. He mentions both nations. So there's no way you can misinterpret this. The 10 tribes, okay? Skip over to verse 20, or verse 19, and it says, "The portion of Jacob is not like them," not like the heathen. Who's the portion of Jacob? God is his portion, Jacob. "For he is the former of all things." God is the former of all things. And he's the portion of Jacob. "And Israel," now Israel in my Bible is italicized. So that means that the translators added the word Israel there. But it's perfectly good in this case. Sometimes it messes things up. But it's perfectly good in this case because we already know that he's talking to Israel over here in verse 5. Okay? "And Israel is the rod of his inheritance." Oh, the rod of God's inheritance is Israel. What do you do with a rod? "The Lord of hosts is his name." So now we know that the portion of Jacob is the Lord of hosts. Verse 20. "Thou, Israel, thou art my battle axe." Oh, my battle axe. "And weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations. And with thee I will destroy the kingdoms. And with thee I will break in pieces the horses and the riders, the chariots," he goes on and on, "women and men, break in pieces the young and the old, the shepherd and his flock, the husbandman, the yoke of oxen, captains and rulers, render them, boo, nothing left to you guys." Eh? Israel, all 12 tribes, are going to be God's battle axe. With the 12 tribes, and mainly Israel, written in the United States, he will put down world tyranny, which we did. It already came true. Whoa. Well, we don't have much left here, but we do want to go to Leviticus, because this will, again, another piece of evidence that locks down who the United States is, okay? Who they are, and that they're the United States, right? They go to Sinai, they get the 10 Commandments, everything's great. They are now an official nation under God. Great. And God says, "Here's what I want you to do." Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And they say, "Yes, Lord, we'll do it. We'll everything you say, we'll do. Just don't talk again because we're too afraid." He says, "Well, I'll tell you what though. If you do all these things that I tell you, you keep my commandments and my statutes, I'll bless you." Everybody in the world will say, "Wow." If you don't, and mainly this has to do with idol worship, okay? He's not much interested in who they marry and who they don't, and he's not gonna punish the whole nation for somebody who marries outside of the family, okay? But what he will do, he will punish them if they reject him and go to worshiping idols. That's all over, all that adultery that God talks about. It's all about worshiping idols, okay? So he says in verse 18 of 26, "And if ye will not for all this hearken unto me, then will I punish you 7 times more for your sins." Read right by that. Okay, I'll punish you 7 times. We don't know what that means. But we get down to verse 24, and what's he say? then I will also walk contrary to you, and will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. Wow, that's 2 times he said that now. That's adequate witness. A thing is established at the mouth of 2 or 3, and 3 comes in verse 28. He says, then will I walk contrary unto you also in fury, and I will even chastise you 7 times for your sins. Well, now wait a minute. He's going to repeat himself 3 times. We should research this and find out what this 7 times is, because we know that they went to idol worship. Both of the nations, Israel and Judah, went to worshiping idols. Judah came out of it every now and then, but they went back in. And that's the main reason why Babylon took them away, because they were idol worshipers. Oh, well, 7 times. 7 times. What could a national punishment be? Well, they're in the Holy Land. They're doing their thing day to day, planting their crops and everything, and the Midianites come down and they're going to conquer them and take over the land for a while and eat all their crops and everything. Well, that's punishment. That's true. Okay? What's more important than some foreigners coming and conquering them for a while and then going away? What's more important than that? Try the birthright. Okay? Try the birthright. See? Check anywhere you want in the Bible. You'll never find that the house of Israel, the 10-tribe northern nation of Israel, ever became a world empire. That's their birthright. Ephraim is going to be a multitude of nations. He got carried away, lost, boom. And if you only stay with the Bible, well, that's all I need, the Bible and the Holy Spirit. If you only stay with the Bible, you're going to miss God. Okay? As we've seen for 23 segments, God has moved history for 2,500 years to make his prophecies come true, to keep his word to Abraham. A multitude of nations. They never were. They never got the birthright. The birthright's more important than a couple of years under foreign rule, right? And they never got that. That was their punishment. There's a lot of other stuff went with that, but that was their punishment. Their punishment was, if they're not a nation, how can they become an empire? They're not a nation anymore. There's nobody left in the house of Israel. A couple of vine dressers and so forth. Everybody else has gone up to the Caucasus Mountains and under the Black Sea. Okay? We try to do the math on 7 times. Now, it can't be 7 days. You start worshiping idols as a nation, I'm going to punish you for 7 days. Come on. 7 weeks? Same trip. 7 months, even. How about 7 years? Well, 7 years you could call that, but at the end of 7 years, if you look up somebody that conquered the house of Israel and they had them under subjection for 7 or 8 years, you're not going to find that they came out of that subjection and became a world empire. Huh? 7 years doesn't work. Oh, we still got 7. How many days in a year? They always figure 360, right? 360, not 65. 360. Let's say 360 years is 1 time. 1 time is 360 years. 7 times 360 years is 2,520 years. That's a long time. 2,520 years? Wow. Well, how do we lay that 7 times over the history of Israel? Well, that's pretty easy, because we know that house of Israel was first attacked by Tiglath-Pileser. And in one of his annals, he writes, 745 BC, I did this. I conquered the first. Remember the outline of the plots of land for each tribe? And when they were making their way up on the east side of the Jordan River, before they crossed over, Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh said, hey, we're going to stay on this side. There's good pasture over here, and we got a lot of flocks. We're going to stay here. Manasseh was top. He was northernmost. Gad was in the middle, and Reuben was down at the bottom, down by the Red Sea, the Dead Sea. Tiglath-Pileser first conquered tribe of Manasseh. Those were the first ones he came across. Boom. They conquered all those on the one side, and then they went over the Jordan River and conquered everybody else on there, except for Judah, and we don't want to get into that story yet. 745 BC, Manasseh went into servitude. They were conquered. They lost their land. Their punishment period began 745 BC. If you add 2520 to 745 and then take away 1, because there aren't, when you cross over the BC AD line, you got to subtract 1. What do you wind up with as a date, as a year? 2,520 years after 745 BC is 1776. What important world event happened in 1776, right? Declaration of Independence, right? Manasseh became free, and they could start to get their blessing and become, eventually, the greatest nation on earth. There's more 7 times here, okay? The official date that the house of Israel has for finally being conquered completely is when Samaria fell. Okay? Siege for 3 years, and they fell in 721 BC. 721 and 2520 is 1800. Just when the British Empire started to really explode. They got their birthright good in 1800, starting in 1800. Remember Ingersoll? I mentioned him way early on. He was a detractor. He said, no, the Bible can't be true. The Bible can't be true. Look here, all of these promises that God gave to the Jews, they never got them. England got them. Britain got all those promises. That the Bible, he didn't know that Britain was Ephraim and Northwest Europe was lost tribes. Okay? When did the punishment period for Judah begin? You know, we got the precedent of Israel being wiped out, losing their land. They're gone. They don't have a country anymore. Same thing happened to Judah. Nebuchadnezzar comes, takes those guys away, keeps them for 70 years. They lose their country. Okay. Well, they come back after 70 years. Good. Okay. They come back after 70 years. Well, what did God promise them? They didn't get the birthright. All they got out of the birthright was to be the king and to make sure that they were the depository of God's law. Period. They would be the rulers over all the Israelites, not just Judah, but the whole family. Okay? Well, when they came back from Babylon, there weren't any Israelites around. There were a straggling few. You don't find their names anywhere in the accounts of the people who came back from Babylon. Only 50,000 out of 650,000 came back. They're gone. So Judah can't rule. Well, they didn't get their punishment wasn't over. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar first came to get them, to punish them, and conquer the land, and take away all the nobles and the artisans and the craftsmen and all the important people. Take them away. 603 BC. 2,520 years to 603 BC. Some of the intervening time there weren't conquerors, there weren't people ruling over Jerusalem. There were short periods there where they had autonomous rule. But mostly, during all that 2,500 years, there were other people. In Jesus' time, who was running the Holy Land? The Romans. Huh? Who ran them before the Romans? The Greeks. The Syrians came down and conquered. Everybody. Okay? They never really had a place of their own for a long time. 2,500 years after 603 BC, just happens to be 1917. Oh, well, that wasn't the independence of Israel, Judah. What happened in 1917? Well, in connection with the First World War, General Allenby, a British general, walked with his hat in his hand into Jerusalem while the Turks fled out the back door. Because the prophecy says that, not the 7 times prophecy, but the prophecy of the liberation of Jerusalem after these centuries of other people. Jerusalem is liberated and there wouldn't be any fighting in the city. The city would be spared. If in the First World War they had all this heavy artillery, they could have leveled Jerusalem, if the Turks wanted to stay and make a fight of it, but they didn't. Just happens that they ran out the back door. 1917. And I don't have this researched definitely, but in 1795 was the French Revolution. Now we know from a study of the lost tribes that France is the tribe of Reuben. Other groups are in there, but it's the tribe of Reuben. Reuben was conquered when Assyria came down and began their punishment period. If you run back from 1795, 2,520 years, you get to 725 BC. Which, as I said, I haven't reconfirmed this, but after 4 years later was when Samaria fell. So it's possible that Reuben, because they were way down at the bottom already, and it's possible that they finally were conquered in 725 BC. So that's kind of iffy, but 1776 from 721 BC is not a coincidence, okay? 7 times. What are you going to do with all that stuff? Huh? Now, for you who will take up this study, you're going to run into some prominent and highly skilled and researched authors who will say the opposite. Ephraim is the United States. Manasseh is Britain. Because Ephraim got the birthright and they were the most important, and clearly the United States is more important than just Britain. How can that be? If the United States was Britain, our heraldry would have Britain's heraldry. Huh? Of the ox and the unicorn and the Lion of Judah. The Lion of Judah. Remember, all those Judahite from Zara line were scattered all over Northwest Europe and the British Isles, just waiting to rule the Israelites when they showed up. So that God kept his word to Judah, right? 2,500 years. What are you going to do with that? You can't do anything with it but say, well, it must be God. The United States is the tribe of Manasseh. And with that, we close the official video series of the Lost Tribes. I'm probably going to do some more videos that will touch on this, but that's basically it. The Pilgrims, helped out by God, wound up in the right place, founded the nation, were from the tribe of Manasseh, made the Mayflower Compact. The other settlers didn't have that kind of political thing going on. Mayflower Compact becomes the Declaration of Independence, becomes the Constitution, unique in history except for Moses, right? Lost Tribes. It's the most important study that a believer can do, okay? Because it just locks down with 3 or 4 mountains of evidence that God is real. And if God is real, the Bible is true. And if the Bible is true, I have a way to get in contact with God, okay? I have a way to make it into eternity, to be with God forever. And all I have to do is act in trust of something He said instead of making my own way. When I'm confronted with a situation and there's a decision to be made, I can say, well, this is going to make me unpopular. I can't afford to do that. See? When it's clear that God has something that you should do, and you can't say, well, you say, okay, God, I'll take your word for it. You said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. You said all these promises about provision and guidance and protection and all that, and I'll take a chance on you, God. Why not try God? You know? What can be better than that? And it's so easy, right? You look up in the Bible, you find out who the prophecy was to. You look up in history and find out who got that promise. And all of a sudden, there it is. It's all lost tribes. It's all the lost tribes. It's way easier, more simple, I should say, because it's a lot of hard work. It's way simpler than proving the resurrection. That's a difficult one. You can do it, but lost tribes is so much easier to do, okay? And it does the same thing, okay? Lost tribes. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless.